On units, we have shots fired in the vehicle in question.
Hello, welcome to the Nomad channel. So today I want to talk about a situation that, again, as a police officer, I get asked this question all the time, and that's, what do you recommend, how do you recommend concealed weapon holders respond to an active shooter situation? So as a police officer, I teach active shooter response to a lot of companies, corporations, things like that will have us come in and talk to all their employees about workplace violence and how they can, what they should do in an active shooter event. And again, I was talking to, we were doing one of these presentations the other day on workplace violence at a major company, and at the end the guy raised his hands and he said, on the job we can't carry guns, but out, other times, other places, I carry a concealed weapon. What should people do that are carried during an active shooter event? And so I decided that this needed to be one of the first videos that I put out, because I think it's a huge question out there. So the first thing that, and I don't like to put people on the spot, especially like this guy, but I would have liked to have asked him, sir, how often do you carry your weapon? And because my big thing is, carry your weapon. Why have a concealed weapon permit if you're not going to carry it? And so, first of all, if you're concerned about that situation, make sure you're carrying your gun every day, because if you're not, what good are you? I've talked about this before. They talk about the gun culture in America, and how many guns there are in America, how many gun owners there are in America, and how many concealed weapon holders there are in America. Well, let me ask you this. In all of our active shooter situations that we have, if we have such a big gun culture, we have so many people carrying guns, why isn't every active shooter stopped by an armed citizen? That's my question. And I'll tell you, the reality is because most people that have a concealed weapon permit don't carry their gun every day. They rarely carry it. That's just the reality. So don't be one of those people. My first answer to that question is, make sure you have your gun. And you don't know when it's going to happen, and you don't know where it's going to happen. These things happen in every conceivable place you can think of, and so you should carry your gun all the time that you possibly can, so that you can hopefully make a difference and save lives, maybe save even your own or your family's. All right, so let's get into it. Active shooter situation is the most chaotic, stressful situation that a person can be involved in. Typical police response, now this can vary where you are in the country, can be up to 5 minutes. And I'm going to say up to. Typically it's 3 to 5 minutes. It's becoming shorter and shorter, but there's that time lag from the minute a guy starts shooting, walks into someplace, starts shooting, for it to get, the 911 calls to go in, police dispatched, and then cover the distance to get there to even get on scene where the shooting is taking place. And so there's that time lag of a few minutes at least. You're going to have hundreds of officers respond. In a typical active shooter in a somewhat urban area, it would not be uncommon to have over 100 officers respond to that situation, depending on time of day, day of the week, that type of thing. It's going to be super chaotic. First thing that you want to do, if you can get out of the situation, I recommend getting out of the situation. Especially if you're there with your family, get your family and evacuate out of the situation. Get out. Number one, that's the best thing that you can do, is simply not be where the shooter's at. So evacuate out of the way. Homeland Security and everyone talks about run, hide, fight. We'll talk about that a little bit. I don't like to use the word run, because to me that just means I just think of this panicked chaos of like gazelles out on the fleeing from a cheetah, and there's just this panicked run of craziness. That's not what you should do. I like to talk about evacuate. You should evacuate if you possibly can. If you are not in the immediate vicinity of the shooter, you should evacuate. I don't like the term hide. Hiding does not mean getting down under a desk, getting down under your chair. Hiding, to me, and what I teach in these classes that I talked about, is barricading the room that you're in so somebody can't get in there and shoot you. And the only reason you would do that is because you simply can't evacuate. And there's a number of situations that may prevent evacuation, not just that the shooter's out in the hall. And so maybe you decide that you can't evacuate, and so then you should barricade. And I don't like to use the word hide, because people talk about hiding, and that just means getting down under a desk and the guy just walks up and shoots you in the head from 2 feet away, because that's not hiding. So number one, evacuate. Number two is barricade. Hide doesn't do it. Lock the door, turn on the lights, put something big and heavy in front of the door so that the shooter can't get in there and access you where you're at. And obviously number three is fight. Now, I'm going to flip that around a little bit. If you're in the immediate vicinity of the shooter, your only option is to fight. Because if you're in the immediate vicinity of the shooter, you can't evacuate because he's shooting you. He's going to shoot people. What good does it do to, to take off running? You're 5 feet away from the shooter. He's just going to shoot you. You can't hide because he knows where you're at. Or you get down under a table. As soon as he stops shooting, to reload, he's going to look around and see you under the table and blow you away there. So that's not an option. If you're in the immediate vicinity of the shooter, your only option is to fight, and that's whether you're armed or unarmed. I don't care if you're not carrying a gun, but you're in the immediate vicinity of somebody who is actively killing people. Your only real option is to take that person out with whatever means you have available to you. With your bare hands, if you have to. Otherwise, you're just going to get shot in the back running away. And so, what was the point? You might as well at least try to fight. So, what should you do if you have a weapon? Again, immediate vicinity of the shooter, pull your weapon and put the shooter down. If not, evacuate. If you are not going to evacuate, or you can't evacuate, then what I like to say, I recommend to people, set up a zone defense. It's like basketball or football. You find a defensible position. Hopefully it's something that stops bullets, that you can get down behind, that gives you some cover and some concealment. And then you set up and you just hold that zone, and if the shooter comes into that zone, you engage him and put him down. If not, you hold that. Now here's the problem, is when police respond, they are looking for a person with a gun. The 911 calls are going to be chaotic. They don't know how many shooters. They don't know what they look like. Police are just responding to a guy with a gun. Now you don't want to be that guy when the police come into your area, because they're looking for a guy with a gun. And so if you're holding that position, that defensible position, the longer that this goes on, the longer this event goes on, listen to the gunfire. Once the gunfire has died down, or you can tell that police are on scene, I would lower my gun down, or I would even reholster it, or just have it down to my side, so that I don't stick out as that guy with the gun that the police are looking for. So if you can't get out of it, or you think that you need to stay there and protect people that can't get out of it, set up that defensive position, hold that zone. Again, if the shooter comes into that zone, then put him down. If not, wait for police to evacuate you, but don't have that gun in your hand, and for whatever, don't point it at the police, because they're going to shoot you. And that's where it goes back to, I always ask people, when they say, well, what do you recommend? I'm a concealed weapon permit holder. What should I do in an active shooter? I'll say, how much training do you have responding to an active shooter? And 99, well, all of them that I've ever asked have said, well, none. And I said, well, see, that's the thing. How will you differentiate between police officers? Because police officers are going to be responding in every conceivable manner of dress you can think of. They're going to be in uniform. There's going to be detectives in plain clothes. There's going to be narcotics officers that look like dirtbags showing up. There's going to be guys that are coming back from the gym and they hear it come over their radio and they respond in t-shirts and basketball shorts. You might throw on some body armor as they come in. You're not going to be able to tell a police officer just because it says police on them. My other question is, how will you distinguish between other concealed weapon holders that are maybe doing the same thing you're doing? Like I said, it's pure chaos. And if you haven't trained for it, how do you expect to be able to perform in something in the most high stress situation you can even imagine, and you've never trained for it? So again, that's why I say hold that defensive position. The thing I do not recommend is to get up and go actively hunting for the shooter, because for those reasons I just talked about. Police don't know who you are. Have you trained in, how much training have you had in doing that? Probably none. How will you differentiate between the shooter and another guy just like you doing the same thing? And you can very easily make the situation worse. Now, on my blog post, I'm going to put a link to it. I go through, and there's been successful, resolutions of active shooter events by armed citizens. And I'm going to, in my blog, I talk about one of them in depth that I think it ends well. It's a happy ending. The right guy gets shot and nobody else. But it brings out a lot of the potential problems and things that everybody should be thinking about. And so I highly recommend, I said I'll put the link in that, I highly recommend reading that and kind of learning from the experience of these two guys who, yeah, they did the right thing. They ended an active shooter situation on their own. Great job to them. But it also, like when the police arrived, the police believed there was 3 shooters. There was actually 1 shooter, 2 good guys going after him. It got relayed to the police that there's 3 shooters. And so, fortunately, it worked out good. Like I said, the right guy got shot, no one else got shot. But it's definitely something to learn from. And again, to think about, pre-plan what you're going to do, how you should respond, and think about some of those issues and questions that I brought up. How will you differentiate who's who in that split second of seeing a guy with a gun? Are you just going to see a guy with a gun and start shooting? It may not be the shooter. I really recommend, thinking through it, and I highly recommend, if you think you could be involved in something like that, or you want to be ready for something like that, go and get reputable training on responding to active shooter or that type of a high stress type of a shooting environment. So in this video, I just kind of want to hit some of the high points. I really recommend, click on that link below, go into the blog and read about this active shooter event that took place in Oklahoma, I believe it was, where 2 armed guys responded to an active shooter. They did the right thing. It all ended well, but a lot of lessons that all of us can learn. And it's something that even as a police officer, me training and being ready to respond to one of these situations, it was good for me to think about too, especially where I live in a state that we do have a lot of people that carry concealed. When I respond to an active shooter event, I have to be prepared for encountering other armed citizens as well. It's not just the shooter, or it may not be. And everybody, police, everybody has to be prepared for encountering other people. I could encounter off-duty police officers. I might be the off-duty police officer and encounter other police officers that aren't, dressed in a traditional uniform. So it's something all of us have to be prepared for and think, you know, bigger than, it seems like real life isn't as black and white. That, oh, okay, there's one shooter and anyone with a gun is, you know, open season to put that guy down. It's reality, it's just not that way. So I hope this gives you something to think about. And again, my whole purpose isn't to tell you what to do. My purpose in everything that I do with my blog and with this channel is to make you think. Because remember, at the end of the day, it's not what you hold in your hand that saves you in a self-defense situation. It's what's in your head and in your heart. Nomad signing out.